Mexican cuisine is what started my journey on learning how to cook at home and cook for myself and my family. I was born and grew up in the deep South, Tennessee, Mississippi, Florida. But my mother's side of the family is Mexican, and her father was actually born in Jalisco. So I wanted to be able to cook the dishes I would eat when I would visit that side of my family in California and my aunts and uncles. Shout out to my uncle Hito and his barbecuing skills, and my aunts Christina and Olivia and Flora. They would just make really good Mexican food that I didn't get when I was, in the deep South. So this holds a special place in my heart, and so you'll probably see a lot of Mexican recipes in my videos as the library grows. But for dessert with this meal that I'm making for my family this Sunday, I am going to making a Yucatecan cake named Torta de Cielo, which is literally translated to heavenly cake. This recipe is from Diana Kennedy's The Essential Cuisines of Mexico, published in 1972, and is thus at least a 50-year-old recipe and probably much older. When I was reading the description of the recipe, it's apparently a special occasion cake made at weddings and stuff early in the 20th century. I actually don't recommend starting with this particular book if you're unfamiliar with making Mexican food, as the book is a survey of recipes from various regions of Mexico. It's very good. I have it. I've made many things out of it, but it jumps around a lot to different regions and with different ingredients, and it has less explanation in it than the art of Mexican cuisine, which is also by Diana Kennedy, and I do recommend for starting out learning. I used that book quite extensively when I was first getting into making Mexican food. So this is actually The Essential Cuisines of Mexico is actually a really good second book to pick up to continue exploring Mexican food after getting down the basics. And I'll have a link in the description if you're interested in purchasing this book. In order to make our cake, we have the following setup and ingredients: brandy, whole skinned blanched almonds, almond extract, baking powder, sugar, egg yolks and egg whites separated, all-purpose flour, a 9-inch cake pan, as well as a nut and spice grinder. If you don't have a nut and spice grinder, that is a piece of specialized equipment that we will need here, as well as a stand mixer. If you don't have those things and you want to make this, I will put links in the description on the products that I specifically use. No endorsements, no paid for anything like that. This is actually what I use to cook here in my own home. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step we want to do here is we want to grind up the almonds into a coarsely ground powder. I've got an example of sort of what you're going for here. It's not as fine as almond flour, so I don't think you can just cheat and use almond flour and get the same results as the recipe. You definitely want ground almond. And so go ahead and open up your spice grinder. You can see it's got powder in there from what I did before. You do not want to fill up spice grinders all the way to the brim. They don't do well, and if you over grind, you actually can end up with sort of like a paste or some sort of like thick viscous material, which you don't want either. So we're gonna go ahead and grind this. I'm gonna show you what it looks like when it's done, and then we'll move on to the next step after I've ground all of these almonds. Voila, all done, that easy. Okay, the next step was to beat the egg whites until they were stiff and firm. I didn't want to put that on camera because it's just noisy and it's just the stand mixer going in a circle for rapidly for a long time. But I did want to show you what the egg whites look like when they're ready. So you can see there's a peak right here that is standing up on its own. That means your egg whites are firm and you're ready to go. The egg whites will go through several phases of foamy and then soft peaks, and then you'll get to stiff peaks like this, and this is where you want to go. Now the next step after that is to slowly beat in your egg yolks. And there's a sort of chemistry reason for doing this, which is that egg whites will not get to stiff peaks if they have any amount of protein in them, which is in the egg yolks, or something like that. I'm not a food scientist. That's sort of what I read over the years. In any event, there's many recipes out there that will have you do it this way, where you beat the egg whites and sometimes beat the egg yolks too, but combine them after they've been processed separately here. Let's get all right, that's good enough. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do after that is we have our ground almonds right here. We're going to go ahead and add the dry ingredients, sugar, and that was the flour and the sugar. And we're going to have a 1/4 tablespoon of baking powder to that as well. And we will mix all that up. Just sort of blend all that together so that you get an even distribution of that sugar, flour, almond mixture, and baking powder. We also want to add just a small amount of salt. And it's referred to as a pinch. I'm not sure how much a pinch is. But just enough for a small amount. Okay, now that we've got this all mixed up, now we're gonna fold this into the liquid mixture bit by bit. You can see it's really starting to thicken up into a nice cake batter. Yeah, you see how nice and that is really thickened up. All right, you don't want to overbeat batters in general. They tend to become super dense if you beat them too much. So, all right, we're gonna stop here. I'm going to butter and flour the cake pan and preheat the oven to 325 degrees, and we will pick it up from there. And I totally lied. I forgot the most important, well, not the most important, but one of the most important parts of this whole process, which is that we need to flavor this batter. Otherwise, it would just be generic almond cake. So we want to put just a tiny bit of almond extract in there. And then we will also put about a tablespoon of the brandy. And the alcohol cooks out whenever you cook with alcohol, so it's no big deal if you don't partake in drinking, and you can, yeah. So one more quick whisk to get it all incorporated. Now I will see you at the cake pan. All right, so let's go ahead and spread this cake batter in. Yeah, see how nice and smooth that is. And we'll use the spatula here to get the rest of it out. Rubber spatula is a very underrated and super important tool if you want to get into any sort of baking, but or sauces. It's just, for something that's such a rudimentary tool, it's so useful for doing so many things, particularly getting the last bits of batter out of. Now, I actually don't know if it's truly necessary to butter and parchment paper and flour the cake pan anymore with the non-stick surfaces. This is a super old cookbook, and that could have just been the way that they did it back then. But I do it anyway, just for the sake of trying to do it correctly and having a good result come out. All right, now this is going to go ahead and go in the oven for about an hour and a half, and then we will see how it came out. Okay, so I just took our cake out of the oven, and you want to let it sit in this cake pan for a few minutes and let it cool down slightly before we move it to our cake rack and let it finish cooling down to room temperature. Only because a lot of times when cakes first come out of the oven, they're extremely fragile, and you don't want it to break up after doing all this work or just anything like that. So let's go ahead here and get this. Okay, very good. Remove that. And we will go ahead and set it here. And yeah, go ahead and let that cool entirely to room temperature before you do anything else with it. This is the point at which the cookbook recipe stops, but I prefer for my cakes to have a little bit more visual appeal. So the next part will be a cookbook monkey special as far as garnishing and making your cakes look a little nicer. Okay, so our cake has cooled down to room temperature, and now we're going to garnish it just to make it a little more fancy and visually appealing. So what I did here was make a simple syrup, which is half sugar and half water, and then you just boil it in a saucepan until all the sugar dissolves, and then let it cool to room temperature. And the purpose, I also flavored it with just a few drops of vanilla and almond extract just to match the flavor profile of the cake. And the purpose for that is we're going to garnish with sliced almonds on the top, and a slight brush of this simple syrup will make the almonds stick. So we'll go ahead and I'll also add just a little bit of this, because you can see there's holes in the top of that cake. It'll add a little bit of moisture and sweetness. You know, us Americans tend to like things a little sweeter than many other cultures. Okay. That's good. All right, almost done here with that. Some people will garnish without adding some sort of adhesive material, and if you do that, when you cut the cake, the pieces, the whatever's on top of it, obviously it's not attached in any way, and it will just sort of fly all over the place. So I'm going to slightly just press all of this down a little bit into the syrup. See how some of the pieces are flopping about, but I may actually just drizzle a little of this over the top to help stick. And then the final step here, you can see there's an almond skin, or you don't want a lot of almond skins on your, almond skins kind of have a bitter taste that you don't really want, especially in a dessert. So if you see any, just, you know, small pieces are fine, but if you see any larger pieces, you want to just go ahead and remove those. So, okay. And then the final step here is we're going to top that with a little bit of confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar. Alrighty, and that is our cake. I will get it over to the cake stand and we'll cut a piece. Okay, and here is the completed cake with a slice cut out so you can see what the inside looks like. Let me get it up here close so you can see, but it's nice and dense. It's a very moist, nutty cake on the inside. It looks dark on the outside, but that's normal. I know people probably will think that it's burnt, but it's not. It smells really good. It definitely smells, it puts a nutty aroma into your kitchen. And if you enjoyed this video or any of my others, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.